Musical Talk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast. Hello and welcome to another edition of Musical Talk. I'm Thos, and I sometimes wonder if it's cheeky to imagine what it would be like if Dolly Parton, the person behind 9 to 5 the musical, was cast in Mame and ended up singing Bosom Buddies. Well, as it happens, there is now a tour of Mame going around the United Kingdom at the moment. That's featuring Tracy Bennett, and it opens later this week at the time of broadcast. And one of the best songs in Mame, if you don't know it, is Bosom Buddies. It is, I think, the bitchiest song in the musical theatre canon. And very funny too. If you've ever heard the recording between Angela Lansbury and B. Arthur, you'll know what I'm talking about. But, although it is bitchy, it may not be as bitchy as Bitch, 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 which you may or may not know is a cut song from Jekyll and Hyde, the 1997 musical by Frank Wildhorn and Leslie Bricusse. And it's musical adaptations of Jekyll and Hyde that we're going to be talking about today, or more specifically one. And yes, I know you can't believe it, but all that opening spiel was just leading us to this moment. And I will accept it was a meandering route. However, we're here now, so let's get on with it. Well, one of the great shows that I saw this year at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe was called Jekyll Versus Hyde. Jekyll and Hyde is a perennial for productions at Edinburgh, and indeed elsewhere, but perhaps particularly in Edinburgh, because it's a story by Robert Louis Stevenson, a much venerated Edinburgh writer, and is partially based on the story of Deacon Brodie, a man who was well-to-do by day and a criminal by night. Put that story together with another Edinburgh tradition, and that's a show by Laurence Owen and Lindsay Sharman, and you have a recipe for success. And that show was Jekyll Versus Hyde. It won many 5- and 4-star reviews, not least from this programme. We gave it 5 stars, called it clever, absurd and simply brilliant, and was a follow-on, but not a sequel to, their marvellous show The Time Machine from a couple of years ago. They really are mining that gothic horror kind of story. And, if I may say, with increasingly brilliant results. They're hugely adept performers, they're hugely marvellous writers, very engaging, and the show was, I think, a genuine triumph. Its conceit, in brief, is that Laurence is trying to present a serious adaptation of the story of Jekyll and Hyde, and Lindsay wishes to revert to one that they wrote in the past together, which was much more commercial and terribly brash, called Hidey-Ho. And much as the story of Jekyll and Hyde itself is about two sides of one person fighting for dominance, so too is Jekyll versus Hyde. It's a story about and an homage to and an adaptation of Jekyll and Hyde. Well, I hope that's whetted your appetite, because in a few minutes we'll be hearing an interview I conducted with Lindsay Sharman and Laurence Owen in Edinburgh, fresh after a performance. And we spoke about the duality inherent in telling that story and their adaptation of it. Now, usually, in a situation like this, I would play one song from the show beforehand and one song from the show afterwards. But today, because of the nature of the show as I've already explained it, 2 stories fighting for dominance, I'm actually going to play 2 songs from the show before we get into that interview to give you a flavour of what it's all about. So the first song you'll hear is a serious song. It's the transformation theme from Strange Case, the serious adaptation of Jekyll and Hyde, and will be followed immediately by a very upbeat song called Whoa, Whoa, Whoa from Hidey-Ho. And if that doesn't sound fun to you, well, I'm afraid there is, just to add to the jollity here, nowhere to hide.
Why is it good is praised and bad is shunned, when bad comes naturally to everyone? Why do we judge the evil that men do, when we ourselves have evil in us too? And is it really in God's plan that we make pains to quash the natural state of man? Well, not I, I will tolerate this fantasy no more. I will be freer than man's ever been before, free to explore the other side of humankind, which for so long has been mistrusted and maligned, and which feckless laws forbid. With just one draft, I shall ascend into a playground of the id. My dear friend, how I've longed to meet you. I can hardly bear to look upon your face. You're perfect. My friend, the things that I will do with you, or should I say the things you'll make me do? You think my thoughts, but do you speak my tongue? Quick, Jekyll, speak!
Cogito ergo sum.
A voice as ugly as a voice can be. I dared not hope for such depravity. I am invisible behind your face, this flesh and bone, the perfect hiding place. The perfect hiding place. But of course, you must be named, and for the service you provide, I shall call you Mr. Hyde.
Musical talk.
Picture the scene. The staff room of St. Bart's High School somewhere in America. Dr. Jekyll, head of chemistry, chats to his pals, gym teacher Mr. Utterson, and substitute physics teacher Victor Frankenstein.
Hey dudes, what's up? It's everyone's favorite chemistry teacher, Dr. Jekyll.
J-Man, bro, where you been? Checking out the cheerleaders at practice?
Whoa.
High five!
High five! That's your trick, you old dog. I've only got eyes for one little lady, Juicy Lucy Lanyon.
Oh yeah, you had a date with Dr. Lanyon last night. How did it go?
Oh, hey, Victor. Oh, what's that smell? Did you fart?
No, you splashed me with sulfur as a joke, remember?
Oh, yeah, haha, that was pretty funny. Anyway, let me tell you about my date. Went to the Science Museum with my special lady. It's intellectual. They got a special exhibit on how you make babies. It's also sexual. I could tell by the sweat on her face that her heart was starting to race.
Whoa, 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 what next? J-Man, you're such a tease. Did she let you touch her biologies?
A gentleman never tells.
Oh, come on.
But a scientist explains.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a little thing about the laws of attraction. The human brain is especially reliant on odors to make connections. So I occasionally wafted my manly aromas in her direction. I could tell she was feeling the heat by the way she was grinding her teeth.
Whoa, 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 what next? You're teasing our prickles. When's your story gonna get physical?
I knew she was infatuated, 'cause when I spoke, her pupils dilated. And that's what happens when a lady feels arousal.
Or panic.
And hers were gigantic.
What's next? Did you do a chemistry? Did you zap her body with electricity?
Ugh, no, Victor. You don't even go here.
Oh, nobody likes a substitute teacher.
Oh, it's Lucy. Hey, Lucy. Ready for our big second date tonight? What do you mean a rain check? But I thought you liked... Hello? Hello? She broke up with me.
Oh, that's too bad.
Shut up, Victor. I can't believe this. Why do nice guys never get the girls?
Girls like bad boys, maybe you're kind of a square.
Shut up, Victor. Oh, maybe you're right. God, girls are so shallow. I try so hard to be nice and no one appreciates it. I bet if she knew I had a dark side, she'd really like me. You want a bad boy, Lanyon? I'll show you a bad boy. I'll figure out a way to unleash the monster inside. Then she'll go out with me, 'cause I'm bad. Who's bad? That's me. You got it. Ooh, I'm bad. Who's bad? I'm really bad. Yeah, I'm really, really bad. Fucking hell.
My name's Laurence Owen. I'm the composer and performer and co-creator of Jekyll Versus Hyde.
And I'm Lindsay, and I suppose I wrote the book. That's the proper terminology.
Yeah,
isn't
I think so, yeah.
And that's it.
Well, you
No,
are
I
also the
perform.
performer.
Yeah, I also perform in it.
You have
Sorry.
a significant role.
yes.
Or
sorry.
several.
You've somehow edited that out of your head.
Yeah, it's because I got distracted by a jug of water. I'm very easily distracted.
So that's Laurence Owen and Lindsay Sharman. So
Yes.
people can find you online. That's the also
yeah.
important thing. Now, we're talking about Jekyll Versus Hyde, which is your latest Edinburgh show. Although it's not a sequel, it is, if you like, the successor show to your fantastic Time Machine of a couple of years ago. It's fantastic, it is great, but it has that much, if I may say, I think it has an extra level of sophistication that your previous shows perhaps didn't.
Oh, good.
Oh,
I
wow.
thought you were going to say, but
But-
it
no,
was
it's a
a
good-
little bit
No,
stupid.
it's an enormous bit stupid, but it's lovely. But
In the
it's
best
also
possible.
incredibly clever. It's that wonderful mixture of being absurd and intricate and clever. Because you could, at one level, read it, and I did, as a gloss on the theory of duality, which of course is at the very core of Jekyll and Hyde. But I don't want to put words in your mouth. Tell me, how did we get to where we are today? How did Jekyll and Hyde appear in your lives?
Yeah.
Well,
And were you the parents or the godparents?
Well, I was actually, I do a bit of one-on-one tutoring, and I was actually teaching it. And I was also looking for something that was short enough to adapt for the Edinburgh Fringe, because obviously an hour can't be too long, can't do War and Peace or anything. Although we could, maybe we could.
Maybe we should.
Maybe that's next time.
Yeah.
War but no peace.
Exactly what you said, actually. The duality thing hit me as a nice thing for a husband and wife team to explore throughout through the story itself.
Yeah, and in fact, interestingly, I didn't quite sort of envisage the show properly until you sort of did a synopsis for me.
Yeah.
You wrote out a kind of breakdown of it after we'd been discussing it for ages, and then suddenly the whole concept all just sort of clicked in my head at once, and I went, oh, I see. It's like two different shows happening at the same time, and they're fighting between each other, and like that being a parallel of the story itself.
Yeah, and a parallel also represents who the characters themselves are as well. So Strange Case is the embodiment of the character Laurence, and Heidi Ho is the embodiment of the character Lindsay.
Yeah.
Yeah, were there any? Oh yes, and also I wanted to talk about the idea of sort of schlock rock or popular musicals versus a sort of more a serious theatre with songs.
Yes.
Chamber musicals.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Briefly then, because we've alluded to it, do one or both of you, this will be interesting, perhaps want to briefly explain what the show is, what we've just seen. I mean, I think you've touched on it there, but...
It's essentially two performers at the same time attempting to perform very different musical versions of the story of Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah, the serious one, although the serious one has elements of ludicrousness as well. So the show starts with the serious one, and then the chaotic element, which is the stagehand, introduces the other musical and sort of so derails this serious musical.
Yeah, and it's a constant back and forth, and we keep switching between the two different shows, the very, very serious chamber musical, if you like, a kind of Sondheim-esque, very high art, high theatre one.
With sock puppets.
With sock puppets.
Sock puppets, but Gilbertian patter. Now that's a
Yeah.
it's a great, it's a great
Yes.
combo, that.
I suspected you would probably touch on the influence on that song.
I
yeah.
can't help it, but watching non-articulate socks singing an articulate song is a very interesting...
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah, we didn't want either musical to be too good, as it were, which is why we introduced the sock puppets for the first thing, because we didn't want people to be like, oh, I was really getting into that excellent, serious musical.
Yeah.
And you know, to be annoyed at the Lindsay character for interrupting it. So introducing sock puppets is kind of going to the audience, this is a bit crap, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's hope something stops
We
it.
hope it's almost like a signpost to saying people, don't worry, it's not just this for an hour.
Well, I think that happens the moment that the black cloth behind which you're performing, Lawrence, when you're doing the sock puppets, is placed over your head because Lindsay's off doing something else, I think, preparing tea as a bit part.
Yeah.
Before we get on to the duality, which I think is going to be the substance of that conversation, I would just like to say I love the way you feed, because it's a great novel, and I've had the privilege of reading it, because I once also adapted it for pantomime. So
Did you?
Yes, I feel your pain and your love.
This.
I wouldn't possibly comment, but yours is infinitely better, I should say. But I like the fact that you, without over-egging it, you also pick up on the flaws, if I may be able to say that, in Stevenson's novel, because it's always had the weakness of not really having any female characters worth mentioning, and no one stays around for more than a page.
Yeah.
I mean, the way I remember it was evil housekeeper, referenced child, and histrionic maid who spots the murder of Sir Danvers Carew from a window.
Yeah.
That's right.
But basically, the police said, well, but you're a histrionic maid. Yes,
Yeah.
I am, sir.
Yeah.
Well, I won't be listening to anything you say. Be upon your business.
Yeah, that's typical in novels of that era, though, isn't it? Everything is reported.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to see any actual exciting things happening. You can only hear people going, goodness me, something rather unpleasant has happened.
And it's all men in drawing rooms, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I love the fact you reference that. You know, you do say so much of this is reported. The mystery element, of course, is no longer relevant after X number of years. And then there are other sort of beautiful references just fed in, because the, if you like, the meta story of the relationship between the two of you as husband and wife performers on the stage goes through its ups and downs through the piece. And you even reference the fact that you had written Strange Case to be the antidote to Heidi Ho. And the word antidote, of course, is not an unweighted word in the world of Jekyll and Hyde. So all these lovely little golden threads, I think. I think that's why it's one of the reasons it's such a beautiful tapestry.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked up on all of that, because there's that fine line between sort of shouting it in people's faces and making it as look, it's a bit of thematic, do wobbies.
Pay attention now.
And then making it a bit too subtle. And you don't want to do that, you want people to pick up on it.
Well, I tell you what I'd like to say. I'd like to say I spotted it because I'm very clever, but the reality is I spotted it because you two are very clever. And that is the actual reality of it, because it's there if you want it, but it absolutely doesn't matter if you don't get that. And once again, you know, really what I'm doing here is just picking up little bits and pieces, because there's so much going on as well. There's sort of no dead time. Even a little throwaway, I think, where Lindsay, you're on the maracas during an instrumental
solo break moment.
Exactly,
which means people who want the solo break can have that, but there's also there's something going on in the sidelines.
We didn't want any of us to, well, either of us to sort of ever not be doing something at all times.
Well, that's the weird thing about Edinburgh as well, though. You can never quite exit the stage.
No.
So you've got to find a way. Well, apart from the one time I did actually exit the stage and stand at the bar, but you can't do that too much. You can't, there are no wings. So you've got to think about what each character's doing at any one time.
You are dependent on your venue a bit, aren't you? And we did write this show with our venue, which is the Voodoo Room Speakeasy, which is a very, very intimate, nice little venue, but it doesn't have any wings or storage or any way of escaping the stage, basically.
We're all in together. They're all the same performers.
Yes,
we know
absolutely.
it very well now, because we've done 4 shows
This
here.
is the 4th one, yes.
Yeah. So we can actually think about that while we're writing, which is a huge relief, actually, because before we had a venue that we kept coming back to, it was always like, is this going to work?
What's going to happen? What will there be?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's like the Jermyn Street Theatre in London, the loos on the stage. You cannot go during a performance.
Right.
There's a lot of people very desperate for the intervals. So
That's
and not always
insane.
because of the quality of the show. Let's just briefly talk timelines then, if we may. So you came across Jekyll and Hyde in your professional life, your other professional life.
Yes.
When was this approximately? Do you always have an idea on when your next show's coming?
Well, we were going to do something last year, but we just ran out of time, really, because you've got to submit your idea by
After doing the time machine?
Yeah, I know. What a basic flaw that was.
If only we could have used it to go back in time. But yeah, you've got to decide what you're doing by November.
Yes.
So you come back from the Fringe in September. You haven't really got very long.
Yeah, you lie down for a bit as well.
Yeah.
We just nothing was sort of really occurred to us, so we took a year off, and then we sort of had the idea for this show pretty much during a visit to the Edinburgh Fringe in 2018, where we just were
as punters.
Yes, exactly, where we were just watching things, and then we wrote it very quickly. in January, basically, of
Oh,
this
yeah.
year. And then we did a very, very early preview in January, and that kind of got most of it done.
Yeah,
But
and
we've
then we tweaked it, took out the shit a bit.
Yes. We've
Hopefully
refined it.
added new shit bits.
Buffed.
Yeah,
believe-
buffed,
Yes.
buffed the two.
Yes, of course.
So I'm going to ask you a stupid question. It was obviously written with that duality in place. You didn't actually go off and write a Strange Case and a Heidi Ho and then work out the best bits. Or are there bits of both those shows? I mean, not in completeness, but are there other bits of Strange Case and other bits of Heidi Ho still in your drawers? To quote
Yeah,
the,
well, I have a big whiteboard, so I had Lindsay and Laurence's narrative, and then the actual Jekyll and Hyde narrative, and then Heidi Ho narrative.
We sort of
So-
decided with that which musical was going to represent which part of the story.
Yeah.
And we wanted it to feel very even-handed. We
Yeah.
wanted it to. We didn't want one to be sort of weighted against the other. So you get, I hope, of, enough of both
Oh,
shows.
yes, it's not one with the flavour of the other. It is a fair dollop of both, to use the
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then of course combining at the end into this prog rock
Yes.
thing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, speech marks. If there is a moral, it is that. Yes,
Yes.
the best of both can make something better, isn't it?
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
which obviously is displayed both in the narrative and in the speech marks real life going on stage.
Yeah, it's quite a sort of basic moral in a way. Sort
Yeah.
of cooperation,
Yeah.
kids.
Who knew that working together might actually be a good thing?
Yeah. It's like that schism though, because in the book Jekyll is presenting a respectable face and but longs for his wild youth and everything. It's the idea that as well you should honestly embrace both elements and present them to the world.
Yeah.
I think that was it, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that's a fair summation. Yeah.
Yeah.
You cannot just be the gentle veneer of respectability.
No.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
underneath lurks the woodwork.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you're a
Exactly.
table, that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the book's all about repression, isn't it?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
And so the character Laurence is very repressed.
Well, I was going to ask how you developed, how quickly you established who was going to be who.
Oh, I think very quickly.
Yeah.
Well, you basically said, "Well, I'm more of a Hyde, and me, Laurence, I am more of a Jekyll."
Yeah, but also it has to go with our skill sets as well. So Laurence is a musician and a singer, and I am not. So I knew we had to give most of the songs to Laurence, and so it made sense that he was steering the ship. So he had to be Jekyll, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Hyde, being an agent of chaos, doesn't necessarily need to be able to sing.
A tap dance behind a black curtain goes a very long way.
Oh, yes,
Oh, yeah.
There was a lot of enjoyment today, I thought. for that.
Yeah, that was fun. I always enjoy
Make me
that.
fit as well.
But does that face you with any difficulties? Because the problem with the Laurence we see on stage is he's quite highfalutin, he's quite a purist, and therefore not absolutely 100% always likeable. And historically, you've always been on stage a very likeable character.
Well, that's very nice of you to say.
Well, I've always liked you.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we did try and write it in such a way that neither of us were sort of particularly more likable than the other.
Yeah.
We each have flaws.
Yeah. I was very aware of not making Jekyll too unlikable.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think I countered that by making Hyde equally unlikable.
Well, what I like about your Hyde is there's that mixture of sort of your character has truculence, and certainly at the beginning when you're, forgive me, the techie who's just playing Mrs. Twiglet, and also the absurdity, which of course sweetens any kind of. But also, I mean, this actually comes back to the duality thing. That actually, it's not a simple thing that one of you is the bad one and one of you is the good one. In your Laurence and Lindsay persona,
Yeah.
you've both got a bit of that because. As Lindsay, you're disruptive to get what you want, but it's also established that when the putative Heidi Ho musical didn't make it to Broadway, you were able to shrug it off better. You had the better karma, as it were.
Yeah.
Whereas Laurence, obviously, you have the respect that comes with the sort of the upright decency character, but also you've been neglecting your wife in the figurative world we're in here.
Yes.
I should say it's a perfectly lovely, happy marriage. It is. Listeners, they're sitting next to each other, but
Hissing like feral cats.
like illegal ferrets.
yeah.
But so there is that duality within the two of you as well, which is, so it's not a simple, oh look, it's Jekyll and Hyde being projected onto these two characters. It's Jekyll and Hyde being projected into each of these two characters, and I think that's an important distinction.
Well, if you have a protagonist and an antagonist, the antagonist has got to lose, and we couldn't just have the marriage breaking up.
No, that would be a tragedy.
Quite a dark comedy this year.
Yeah, where you vanquish your wife on stage.
Yes.
So and also, it stems also from conversations that we'd had as well. Like we've talked quite a lot about popular music and how it can have artistry and all the rest of it. And the idea, and you in your career, Laurence, you tap into all different genres, don't you?
I do, yes.
And so I wanted to represent that on stage.
Musical polymath.
Yeah. And so part of it was showcasing what you could do, and in order to do that, you kind of have to have a character that can do everything.
There's also some things that have arrived as a result of actual real conversations that we've had, such as my reluctance to play the guitar, for instance. For some reason, I've had this idea in my. I'm kind of working through it now. I think I'm over it now. For some reason, for many years, I had this idea that I don't want to put guitar solos and things into this show.
I'm always the one going, put guitar solo.
Yeah, even though I can play the guitar to a reasonably high level,
certainly can, yes.
But it just I always sort of thought, oh no, it's a bit showy offy. I think
Oh no, but as Joe blogs on the street, me, as someone who's not very musical, I know how I feel when I watch someone do a guitar solo on stage. And I was like, you need to give people that.
So certain elements of that story, with me being sort of coaxed out of thinking that something is an arrogant, showy, offy thing to do.
Yeah.
And then what was it? So I will not lower myself to such self-indulgent and gratuitous behaviour.
Yeah, because I remember you saying it was self-indulgent, but I think that's because you hang out with other musicians a lot. So obviously doing that kind of thing would be showing off to another musician.
I guess so.
But doing it to us...
We the punters.
Yes, we the punters love it. So yeah, I made you give Yoda a guitar solo about 4 years ago.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yes, yeah.
In Cinemusical.
Oh, I remember. Yeah. I must also say that you hoodwinked me, because it's under a black cloth at the beginning, the guitar. And I was betting money when I've seen the show twice. It's one of the few shows I've seen twice this year. And the first time I was with a particular friend, and I said to him, "That's going to be their theremin."
Oh.
Because I knew you bought and learnt the theremin for the last show.
Yeah.
Oh, I
they're
see.
going to bring that out again, and you didn't, you rotters.
Oh.
The theremin was tricky though. That often went a bit wrong just before the show.
The theremin was one of the hardest tech elements to get right every day, because they're so temperamental.
To play or just
to even set up, because they I don't know, they seem to be dependent on whether the moon is aligned with Saturn or something, whether they'll work properly.
Your first astrological instrument.
They're very odd, and so very often you'd plug it in and it would be totally different to how it was the last time I plugged it in, and because it's so simple, it's just a box with a couple of circuit boards in. There's nothing to it, but conversely, it's kind of got no security features within it at all. So I'm not sad to see the back of the theremin for a while.
Yeah, when you got a tight turnaround time and you got to get another show up, you don't want to have to.
The guitar is a bit more meat and potatoes. You just plug it in and it works.
Yeah, put it in the case, walk away.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely. Now, what have the audience told you? Because I saw it on one of your earliest performances here in Edinburgh, but you've also been in London, and as you said, since January it's been doing some kind of performances, hasn't it?
Yeah.
You're at Wilton's Music Hall, I know.
We haven't performed it at Wilton's Music Hall, but we were given a.
Fringe Award.
Yes, we won a little award from Wilton's, where they
Fantastic.
supplied us with a rehearsal room for 2 weeks, and we sort of we workshopped it there, and they're kind of in whatever way they can giving us a bit of a hand.
You did the Comedy Museum as well, though, I think, didn't you?
We did do the Museum of Comedy. Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah.
So you've done it in different places. And we're now essentially a week into the Festival Fringe here.
Yes.
Audience is different every day. Are you getting? I always want to know what. Because audiences are they're that third component, aren't they? There's the two of you and then the audience, and they will make it different for you every night.
Yeah,
isn't it?
definitely.
They've generally been very, very nice, very, very receptive.
This is the most fun show we've done for us.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, we are enjoying this show more than.
Why is that?
I think partly because we're both fully in it. That's nice.
Yeah.
I think it's just always more fun to do a show with another person if you can, because there's just so much more potential for bouncing stuff.
Yeah,
It's
that's
bouncy
it.
offiness, which
Yeah.
I lose the official noun you're looking for.
Bouncy offiness, yeah.
Yeah, being on your own, because we've both done solo shows, and it's keeping that momentum going. It's tough. So you really got to crank it out after the first week of Edinburgh. But actually, when there's someone else on stage, I don't know, some sort of energy exchange goes on.
And I don't know, maybe it's because
duality and mutuality.
Oh yeah,
This is
yeah.
suddenly turning into a Jane Austen novel.
Yeah. I think maybe as well because we are constantly changing between two very different moods, and I can never decide whether I want to do comedy shows or serious shows. So within the same show, you've actually got both, and that is very enjoyable as
It's
a performer.
very Fringe, this show, as well.
It is.
You know, and we got stupid props and Owen and meta elements and all the rest. And those two things, you don't tend to see them in theatre outside of the Fringe, I don't think.
Yeah.
And it's really nice doing a super fringy show at the Fringe.
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean,
Space for it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we hope it will have life after this Fringe, but
deserves to.
well, that's very kind of you to say, but in a way, it is perfectly crafted for the Edinburgh Fringe. This show.
Yeah, whereas I think Time Machine could travel a bit more. So we did talk.
I like what you did.
We need to stop setting up these
in 4 dimensions.
ludicrous clunking cliches.
Yeah. But we did take that around the countries, and I feel like it was a bit more straightforward theatre, whereas this is a lot sillier.
It sort of sells itself, the Time Machine, doesn't it? Because it's a known commodity.
Well, it was a very straight adaptation in a way. The Time Machine.
Yeah.
Obviously, it had another.
lovely injections of comedy into it, but the storytelling part.
The story
Yeah.
was perfectly intact.
And I think people love time travel. I think it's a real selling point. I think it was easier to get audiences along to that than to Jekyll and Hyde, potentially.
yeah.
I mean, we're doing fine with the audiences, but time Time Machine, we were turning people away, weren't
Yeah, every day it was hard to get people in.
Yeah,
because it
yeah.
was
So
full.
so that's an interesting lesson to take away. Now all of our future shows, time
Yeah.
travel.
Do you think that's got anything to do with the fact that, as you make the observation in the show, there are 3 versions of Jekyll and Hyde in all their different forms up here in Edinburgh, including one that's on at the same time as you. And of course, Robert Louis Stevenson is a son of Edinburgh, and Deacon
Yeah.
Brodie, the sort of the archetype for Jekyll and Hyde, has got a pub, and live round here. And, could it just be that, particularly locally, because a lot of Edinburgh residents come to
Well,
the
they've had
Fringe.
enough.
Yeah, I think maybe that's enough Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah.
Wow, I wish someone had told us that before we made the bloody show.
Jekyll and Hyde of High Wycombe,
Yeah.
more exotic.
Yeah. Well,
Maybe.
time travel. There was another time travel up when we did that, but that was a very straight play, and ours was a musical.
Another time machine, that is, yeah.
Time Machine. Sorry. Jekyll and Hyde. There is another musical, literally on at the same time
It's
as
the
this.
Frank Wildhorn one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's another comedy, so not a musical, but there's another comedy version. So they are, probably
It's
splitting
well
the audience a bit.
represented, yeah. So it's possible. It's possible. And maybe if they're not audiences are not familiar with our work, they might choose to go to a straighter adaptation rather than a comedy take on something.
Well, I think there's a word for that. Fool. What have you had to cut?
What have we had to cut?
There's always more material than meets the stage, isn't there?
Every song was a bit longer,
Oh, was it?
I think.
Yeah.
Too many guitar solos.
Yeah, 2 minutes, just so many, just every song, 8-minute guitar solos. Really self-indulgent and
Very
gratuitous.
difficult with the glove puppets.
Yeah. No, I think every single one we cut sort of about 30 seconds to a minute off.
And the argument was difficult. We kept changing the big
Yeah.
climactic argument between us. I
Yeah.
can't remember now. There's so many versions
Yeah.
in my head.
Even the album that we're selling after the show is slightly different. Yes.
Yeah, because we got to record that. We didn't want to. We tried to leave the recording off as long as possible so that the script was pretty much done.
Yeah.
But even after that, I was like, no, I'm sorry, we're going to have to change.
And there's no point doing 2 weeks of rehearsal if you're just going to go, well, that's how it
can't
is
change
now.
it. Yeah,
Can't
yeah.
do anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't
and that
remember.
will make a dead show. I mean, if
Yeah.
it comes inert, then
Yeah.
what's the fun? Where actually it is the bounce and still the organic development.
Yeah.
It takes us back to the audience.
Yeah.
They will find things funny you didn't know were funny, perhaps, and vice versa.
And we are
Yeah.
still adding bits and bobs and changing things very slightly, which is making it a bit of a nightmare for our tech Ben here, who's having to adapt cue lines as he goes.
Yeah.
But essentially, the script is now, I think, pretty much finalised.
Yeah.
But the
pretty
business may still continue.
Yeah, we keep finding new gags.
much. Yeah, what's the last one we found?
Well, the moment where I sort of tear off my shirt very slightly
yes.
when I'm doing a serious soliloquy of a song to make it myself look like even more of an egomaniac.
Yeah.
That
It does
we
have
discovered.
That Heathcliff feel.
Well,
to it.
yes,
Yeah,
I mean
right,
it's
yeah.
this huge white Victorian shirt that looks like
Yeah,
a kind of
yeah.
Les Mis sort of
Yeah. Oh, and
cliche.
what I eat right at the beginning, that changed. Like the first time I ever did it, I tried quavers and they dried out my entire mouth. I was practically choking on them for the first
Yeah,
half. So
we
I was
had
like,
to
right,
pause the
no
show.
Crisps. Yeah, while I went water.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we changed it to sweets, and then we changed it to a bit of backwards and forwards between me and Tech Ben. Because otherwise it's just me on my own, just with the mic, the position of the mic as well. I'm trying to rustle the sweets into the mic, and that can be quite difficult. So it's easier for me and Tech Ben to have a conversation. That's her name now, Tech Ben.
Tech based.
Have you considered making your interruption through Coca-Cola and Mentos? Bearing in mind you reference them later? Or?
The Coke's there,
Yeah.
but not the Mentos is such a ridiculous prop.
I think
Jumbo Mentos.
I think the
Yeah,
Mentos is a moment.
Actually, that was quite a
Later.
late joke because originally Jekyll just stabs himself. And then I was like, hang on, you mentioned Coke and Mentos in that song.
There's another
what
gag
a brilliantly
to be found.
stupid way to die.
Yeah.
So that changed in about the last week before we came here. I think.
Yeah,
It's
very
a better
recent.
ending, though, if you don't mind me saying.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's just got a bit more punch.
Yeah.
Especially for a show that's meant to be the sort of hybrid of the total silly one and the more serious one.
Also in the book, he does poison himself. So Mentos and Coke, in a way.
In a way, it's a kind of
The
poison.
Doctor's right.
Yes.
Dr. Jekyll writes, anyway. So, where next for Jekyll and Hyde?
That's a very good question at this stage.
Oh, Jekyll
Yeah.
versus Hyde.
Jekyll
so
versus
let's get it
Hyde.
right.
Yes, Jekyll
Yeah.
versus Hyde it's called.
Yeah, we don't really know, do we? We don't have a producer, so we might write to a few places to try and get them to. Well, some people are coming who we are trying to, chat up.
Yes.
Yes.
Some venues are coming to see it.
We did take our last show to Wilton's Music Hall, which was very nice. We'd like to take it back there.
Yeah. So she's coming to see the show soon.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, that depends if it fits
If it's
with
there.
what they want.
Yeah. But we hope we might be able to tour it a little bit, and we are starting to formulate a new idea as well.
It's like you know what I was going to ask.
Well, we're quite into turnover. We quite don't like to hang around on one thing too long.
Yeah.
And you know your timetabling. I mean, as we, this is where we came in.
Yeah.
In the sense that it has to be done by November
Yeah.
in a real sense.
At
Otherwise,
least
logistics run away.
the concept of
Yeah.
it needs to be complete by November. Yeah.
And the hook.
Yes. Of course, more
It's
than
very
anything
important.
else.
That.
I won't hold you to anything, but is there any sort of gothic-y or
Yes.
Victorian again?
Yeah, well-
I sort of detect a kind of area, but you like to wallow in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wallow not being the right word, but explore.
Yeah.
Well,
to mudlark.
So we're going for a thriller this time, but
Yeah.
it's sort of gothic-y thriller.
Maybe
Set
we
in a theme park with the. Well, I might as well say
You
it.
might as well set it.
Oh, well,
there.
don't if you don't want to. I mean,
No,
we can take that
that's
out.
all right. So we actually have a podcast where we incessantly talk about Disney.
That is true. Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah, which is only for hardcore Disney fans really, because otherwise it's very tedious. But
Must tell us what that is, though.
Well, it's called Adults Do Disney.
yeah,
Very
And
good.
it speaks for itself, I hope.
yeah, and it's a lot of us doing fake Imagineering and stuff. So
Yeah.
we're going to take our obsession with theme parks and turn it into a sort of a creepy thriller set in a musical, obviously set in a theme park.
Yeah. That's as kind of all we will say at this time.
That's fine.
But yeah.
I'll tell you what I've got. There's a classic, and I do use the word advisedly, a Scooby-Doo episode.
Oh yeah,
Yes,
right.
With Charlie the Robot in a haunted playground.
Yeah.
It probably will have that feel.
I mean, I think Scooby-Doo is the horror reference point that we can all
Yeah.
get behind, right?
Well, they were also
And it's
aiming for a
50
bit
years
of.
this year, by the way. did
Oh,
you
is
know?
it?
It's golden anniversary of Scooby-Doo.
Ah.
Good old Scoob.
2019.
Oh, what, this year or next year?
No, this year.
I've
but,
missed it.
Oh, that's
damn.
a shame.
Yeah, but there's a feature film coming out to mark it between now and then. So.
Okay.
Oh, right.
Just took me off.
Interesting. Because we were also thinking a sort of atmosphere of Twin Peaks, but maybe Scooby-Doo's more, more
Twin
in
Peaks, Scooby-Doo,
ballpark.
hybrid. Yeah, I think probably if we attempted Twin Peaks, we'd end up with Scooby-Doo. Yeah, that's probably what would happen.
our... Yeah. A sort of slightly perverted Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
So, good. So there is a real chance to see Jekyll versus Hyde in the future, we hope.
I expect so.
And the best way of staying in touch so people can find out where it might be is your websites.
Yes, well, we now have a joint website which we're using, which is LOLS Productions. That's LOLS.
Because that's Laurence, Owen and Lindsay Sharman.
Is amazingly our initials.
Because
It works well, doesn't
we're
it?
a Laurel.
We were a little bit. We did debate that for a while. We
Yeah.
did think, is this a stupid name?
Does this make us sound like
LOLS
14-year-olds?
Productions? Come for the LOLs. But
Then, yeah, we went
then
with
we
it.
decided to do it anyway because that's the sort of people that we
Because you are cute.
are. Yeah.
And we are 14 years old
Yeah.
in our head.
It's all dimples.
At heart. But yes, if you go to lolsproductions.co.uk, that will have news and updates as they come.
And your music's all available
Oh
everywhere,
yes,
isn't it?
my sort of serious in inverted commas website is lawrenceowen.co.uk as well. If you're interested in that,
And we have plenty of CDs and download cards if anyone wants to get in touch.
that's true. Yes,
And those are available from the website.
they will be. Yes, yes.
Absolutely. Well, I can recommend it because it absolutely is a 5-star show. This is a cast iron hit. In
Thank
my
you.
view.
Yeah, brilliant.
And because it is the perfect mix of seriousness, absurdity, and the cleverness between the two, so it just starts and finishes, and it finishes too soon. And that's a sign of a good show.
Oh, what a brilliant review.
This is wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So I look forward to seeing your next production. I mean, I spend the rest of the year wondering, I wonder what they're doing. So,
Well, we might have a tie-in podcast, so a narrative podcast to the show that we're going to bring next year as well. So,
That's true.
yeah,
Yes.
so you might get to hear about it.
There may be more tales from the theme park, whatever that turns out to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I genuinely can't wait.
I can't wait.
Yeah, and the moment we finish, I'm going to find your podcast as well.
Oh yeah.
That might be a disappointment.
Don't say it. Well, seriously, Lindsay, Laurence, thank you so much. Thank you for bringing the sharp, and I genuinely look forward to speaking to you again.
Yeah,
Always a
lovely. Well,
pleasure.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Musical talk. Well, there we have it, the amazing Laurence Owen and Lindsay Sharman talking about Jekyll Versus Hyde, their smash hit Edinburgh Festival Fringe show from 2019. It was the winner, as you heard, of the Wilton's Musical Fringe Foundation Award earlier in the year, and it was also nominated as the Broadway World Award for Best Musical Production, and so was therefore no small fry. And don't just take my word for it. Michael Gordon Shapiro, who, as you know, presents frequently on this show, and who is also now a veteran of the Edinburgh Festival Fringe, saw the show as well and loved it. And we'll be talking about it in a future episode of Musical Talk. So remember, if there's a chance of seeing Jekyll versus Hyde, do make a point of trying to catch it. The best way of finding out is going to Lindsay and Laurence's fantastic website. That's www.lolsproductions, L-O-L-S, productions, all one word, .co.uk, and it will tell you if and where there's going to be future productions. You can also get copies of the album in both hard copy and digital format, as well as the albums of previous shows. That includes For Time Machine, Cine Musicals Higher and Cine Musicals. And also, you can get access to their fantastic Disney podcast. And if there's not an overlap between Disney and musical films, I don't know what there is. It's just crying out for a crossover episode. They are a remarkably talented couple, and so do go along and see if anything tickles your fancy. I've said it in a previous episode of this show, Edinburgh just wouldn't be Edinburgh without a Laurence Owen show. I will now amend that slightly to say Edinburgh just wouldn't be Edinburgh without a Laurence Owen and Lindsay Sharman show. And details of a forthcoming show are already on that website, so another reason to go there. Now, I'd like to finish this episode by pretending that I, the very upright and decent Thos Ribbits, will now turn into a horrible, ugly, misshapen monster, but anyone who's met me will know that I always inhabit that particular body, and therefore there's not much of a surprise. Unlike Jekyll and Hyde, my evil, unpleasant, ugly side is as much in evidence as my charming, upright and sophisticated self. I'm sure you'll agree. And if you don't, I'll punch you. And with those charming words, I think it's time to bid you all farewell, or good night, or good riddance, your choice. But we finish tonight not with our usual theme tune, but, most unusually, with a request. On learning that Musical Talk was going to be talking about Jekyll versus Hyde, it was suggested that we should also feature a song from Jekyll and Hyde Make Mine a Double, the British pantomime written by me and Tim Sayward of this parish in 2005. And as it did briefly come up in the conversation with Lindsay and Laurence, I've decided that we will end in that way. So here is an upbeat number sung by my Dr. Jekyll about his machine which will separate impurities from medicine, and of course which is used later in the plot to separate the evil Mr. Hyde from the pure Dr. Jekyll, at least in my story. And it's named after the machine in question, Essence Distillation Engine. Sung for you tonight on a hissy old recording by Tim Sayward.
My essence distillation cabinet will save us all. That's what you think. It's Dr. Jekyll, celebrated, automated, calibrated, patent pending essence distillation engine. Dr. Jekyll's purifying, de-allying, good supplying, mixed blending essence distillation engine. Put inside a thing that's mixed.
Roll it up, sir. Here's a thing that's clever.
Press this knob and then it's fixed. Separates things that were joined forever. Purifies all muddied stuff.
Roll it up, ma'am. am. I can see you're not sure.
Give the engine long enough, it comes out pure.
So roll right up for Dr. Jekyll's greatest invention. The proof is here for all of you to see.
And you'll observe it does its stuff without intervention. These things combined, now unentwined, are free. It's Dr. Jekyll's most effective fault corrective, pan selective, flaw amending essence distillation engine.
I never saw a thing in all my days, maybe sing so much and praise. I never thought narrators could be bought for any rate of any kind, but in the essence come and join and celebrate when the Shakers every day's made another one.
I'll make potions by the score.
Roll on up, sir, this'll make you healthy.
I'll do good amongst the poor.
And what is more, it'll make us wealthy.
I'm a man who has a dream.
Roll on up, sir, he's a prize from Nobel.
Through my engine and my scheme, everyone well. So roll right up and buy a cup of Jekyll's elixir, eternal life, and now we hold the key. So bless this day, I only pray that I can say next year, from ill health's yoke, these happy folk are free.
Oh, I never saw a thing in all my days, maybe sing so much and praise. I never thought narrators could be bought for any rate of any kind, but in the essence come and join and celebrate when the Shakers every day's made another one.
Dr. Jekyll separating, non-conflating, decreating, reinstating, seriating, permutating, isolating, viscerating, amputating, never-ending essence distillation engine.
So ring the death knell for diseases, we'll
Keep them at bay.
So no more sneezes and for wheezes, antithesis.
We could hear a panacea. All are well from this great day.
Without delay.
This episode of Musical Talk edited and presented by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2019, except for the songs, where the copyright remains with the creators. And my thanks to Laurence, Owen and Lindsay Sharman for allowing me to play two of the songs from their fabulous Jekyll Versus Hyde album in this episode. To find out more about the world of Musical Talk and listen to past episodes, go along to our website www.musicaltalk.co.uk or subscribe to us on iTunes and follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can, at Musical Talk Thos. Sorry, there's no time for small talk, so if you're happy, we'll go straight in.
Yeah, of course.
I'm going to put that there and then sit.
Yes,
we might get asked for food or something.
Well, I think they think that they know we're doing an interview, don't they?
Oh, okay.
I think so, yeah. Yes.
If not, I'll have 4 cups of tea and then we'll see where we are.
Yes.
And put a chip in it. So, very quickly for levels, obviously a little bit on the hoof.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you have for breakfast this morning, Lindsay?
I had a vegan chorizo, which was like the ghost of a chorizo.
All skin.
Yeah.
What about you, sir?
Well, I also had that. It was quite nice.
Yeah, it was fine.
It was nice with a bit of boursin on a bagel. It's rather bourgeois breakfast.
Yeah,
isn't
it
But,
is,
yeah.
isn't it?
Surely if you add cheese, it de-vegans it, doesn't it?
Well, yeah.
yeah.
No, we're very lazy vegans and vegetarians.
Yeah, vegans who eat meat and dairy.
Oh, I'm one of them.